Hi everyone, this is Jennifer Hancock and I am a humanist, and this is Ask a Humanist for May, and I think it's the 23rd, 24th, I don't know what day it is, sometime in May. This month's Ask a Humanist is all centered around the concept of motivation. I got several questions kind of interrelated, so I thought I'd put them together as a themed show, if you will, because I really liked what happened last month with responsibility. So this month, we're going to be answering questions about how a humanist gets motivated. I am on the web at www.jen-hancock.com. I offer books and videos on humanism, including a 6-week course on video called Living Made Simpler, which is all about how a humanist lives their life simply and effectively and intentionally and compassionately. So if you want to learn more about how to be the best, most ethical person you can be and how to put your values, the values that you already have into action, my work can really help you out on that. So again, www.jen-hancock.com. Now, the first question I had was how to stay optimistic, and I get this one a lot when I give talks. How do you stay optimistic given the reality of what's going on in the world? You know, how do you keep a sense of agency, a sense of wanting to work to make the world a better place, despite the overwhelming odds that you're not going to be successful, even if you try? And this is really hard, and it's something I'm dealing with myself right now on a small level. I just published a book called The Bully Vaccine, and you know, I don't know how it's going to go, and is it going to help people? Is it not going to help people? What should I be working on? Should I even be working on it? These are hard questions to answer, and I think everybody at some point falls prey to them. And this is going to be a really weird thing to say coming from a humanist, but how do you stay motivated? How do you stay optimistic despite the reality and despite the odds? And for me, what I do is I just decide to do it. I just decide to take action. And it's almost a leap of faith. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know whether I'm going to be successful or not. I don't know whether people are going to be able to be helped or not. But I have to at least try. And I think that's part of what one of the benefits of humanism is. Even though we don't have a belief in an afterlife or that there's, you know, meaning, we do believe that if something good is going to happen, someone has to do something to make that something good happen. And so we take it on ourselves to be that person, to be responsible, to take that action. So how do you stay optimistic? You don't necessarily stay optimistic, but you choose to act anyways, and to do the best you can, and to try to make the world a better place. So I wouldn't say we remain optimistic, because I don't think anybody can at different times of their lives. But we choose to take action anyways, because we know if we do nothing, nothing's going to change. If we want things to change, someone has to take action. It might as well be us. Will we succeed? That's a good question. We hope so. But will we always succeed? No. Will we succeed sometimes? Probably. And that's about, I think, the best that anybody can expect in this world. And I think that's a very realistic approach to the problem of optimism. That, yeah, you don't know. You know, I don't know if my book, The Bully Vaccine, is actually going to help people. I don't know if people are going to like it. I've given away 12,000 copies. People haven't read it yet. The reviews are just slowly starting to come in. But will it do more harm than good? Will it do more good than harm? Who knows? You know, I hope for the best, but I'm plugging away anyways. I'm choosing to do the work I need to do to get it out there in the hopes that it will help people. So I guess that's a form of optimism, even though if you hear me talk about these things, I'm sometimes very pessimistic. May work, may not work. I'm doing it anyways. That's the point. So I think that's the best you can do. And I don't know if other humanists approach it in quite the same way. This problem of being motivated and finding optimism despite the reality of the difficulties that we face. I'd like to hear from you. You know, when you see this posted, feel free to comment and add your thoughts to it. This is how I approach the problem of optimism. Sometimes I'm very optimistic, sometimes I'm not, but I choose to act regardless of my optimistic levels, because I know even if I don't do anything, nothing's going to change. So I might as well take the risk and see if I can get change to occur, even if I'm not optimistic that I can make it occur, because otherwise I'm stuck in despair, and that's not a good place to be, and it's not a productive place to be, because if you're not doing anything, then nothing's going to happen. So, again, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. So the next question I had was, how do you get motivated in the morning? You know, if there's no purpose to your life, and when you believe, as a humanist does, that there is no afterlife, that this is all there is, then there is no grand meaning in life. Your life has no purpose aside from what you create for yourself. Given that, how do you stay motivated? How do you even bother to get up in the morning if nothing really ultimately in the grand scheme of things matters? And, you know, keep in mind, the reason we think that is not, there's the long-term prospect, and then there's the short-term prospect. In the short term, my actions make a difference. My actions make a difference in the lives of people in the here and now. So in that sense, my life absolutely has meaning in the here and now, because I'm helping people. I get emails and phone calls from people that, you know, say they're really touched by my work and that my writing has helped them tremendously. And in a couple of cases, I've helped people choose life instead of suicide. So in that sense, in the short term, my life has plenty of meaning. But in the long scope of things, you know, I'm going to maybe live 80 to 100 years, hopefully more than that, but you never know. But the scale of the universe, which has already been around for, what, 13.5 billion years, 100 years out of 13.5 billion years, it's in the grand scheme of things, completely insignificant. And I think it's really egotistical to think that in the grand scheme of things, you're significant, because you're not. You're significant in the here and now, but in the scale that the universe operates in, yeah, not so much. Right? So how do you stay motivated? How do you get motivated in the morning if in the grand scheme of things, what you do doesn't matter? You know, you're going to live, you're going to die, other people are going to come, other people are going to die, species will go extinct, species will come into existence, stars will go extinct, stars will go into existence. At some point, our galaxy won't exist. At some point, our star system won't exist. And at some point in the past, it didn't. How do you stay motivated? And the answer is that it's kind of neat from a humanist perspective. And again, I'm not sure I'm speaking for all humanists here. I'm speaking for myself as a humanist. For me, the grand scale is kind of neat. You know, knowing that I'm in the grand scheme of things, I actually am kind of insignificant. But in the here and now, it matters. What I'm doing matters for my son, for my husband, for myself, for the people I know, for my friends, for the people who are touched by my work. It matters to them in the here and now. And that's important. Even if it's not important in the grand scheme of things, it is important here and now. And I don't see the problem with finding meaning in the here and now and accepting that this life is transient and embracing that fact and saying, you know, so what if it's transient? So what if in the grand scheme of things it doesn't matter? It matters here and now, and I'm here right now, and I'm going to make the best of the here and now and do the best I can with it and try to alleviate just a little bit of the suffering and try to make the world better, not just for myself, but for other people as well. And I think that's making that choice, and it is a choice, making that choice to make a difference in the here and now, despite the fact that 13.5 billion years from now, no one's going to even remember or be around to remember. I think that's an act of empowerment and defiance, and it feels really good. It feels really good to make this choice. And I think that's one of the reasons why you don't find humanists in general suffering from ennui. You don't find us suffering from despair that often. Yes, we get depressed. Yes, we get frustrated. Yes, we get mad. But by and large, I think one of the reasons why humanists, even though there's not a lot of us, why we are so influential in society and why we have pushed society so far forward, despite the fact there's not a lot of us, is because of this central thing. We have made a choice, and that choice is to make a difference in the here and now. And it's very empowering, and it's very energizing. So, you know, how do you get motivated in the morning? Very easily. I wake up and I think, wow, okay, I'm still alive. I still have an opportunity to make something and to do something today. I might die tomorrow in a car accident. Who knows? But I'm here now, and I'm not going to waste it. I'm not going to waste it. And that's what gets me motivated in the morning. That's why it doesn't matter how tired I am. It doesn't matter how frustrated I might be, you know, once I send my kid off to school. And that's another reason to get up. I have to get my son to school. But once I've got my son to school, why do I dive in and start working and I work hard all day? It's because I'm making a difference in the here and now. I love being disempowered. And I think what happens is a lot of people are afraid of the reality, that the reality is that they're not significant. In the grand scheme of the universe, 13.5 billion years long, you really aren't that significant. But once you accept that, they're afraid that that means that there's nothing there for them. But once you accept the reality of that, it empowers you to make a choice. What are you going to do about it? That's the question. That's the really important question. What are you going to do about the fact in the grand scheme of things you're insignificant? And, you know, some people choose despair. A humanist chooses to embrace that and say, I'm going to do the best I can. And I think that's a hallmark of humanism. You know, you can be non-religious and not be a humanist and not be optimistic. You can be a nihilist. And so that's a choice people make. They look at this and they choose nihilism. A humanist chooses empowerment. And it's very deep. It's very significant to us. And it's what motivates us to get up in the morning. So there you go. What motivates us to get up? We're insignificant. We don't care. We're going to make a difference here and now. And having made that choice, we're going to go with it. And it really feels a lot better than you think. I mean, it's actually really energizing. I love my life. It's a great life. I'm alive. So there you go. Okay, so the third question about motivation that I have today was from Randy Lamonda. And he said, they're talking about people losing faith in everything. How do humanists make a difference? And I'm not sure about who they are, probably the media, but there is an increase in the number of people losing their faith in the supernatural. There's been a rise in the non-religious, a significant rise in the non-religious community in America in the last 10 years. I think the number of openly non-religious individuals has doubled. We used to be about the same size as, you know, there's more non-religious people in this country than there are Hindus and Muslims and Jews. So we are a significant minority. But I think one of the things that happens is when people lose their faith, they lose meaning in life. And they kind of flounder for a while. And I never had this experience because I was raised as a free thinker. I was raised without belief. So this was never a problem for me. My parents taught me to volunteer my time, to care for people in the community, to exercise, to put my compassion for other people into action. And that was how you found meaning in life, is by trying to make the world a better place. So I never had this problem of losing my faith and therefore losing my purpose in life. I think this question, though, opens up a really interesting problem and opportunity for the humanist community. Because there's another study that was done. There was a story in the Boston paper 3 weeks ago about how there's become a rise in spiritual advisors. Not religious advisors, but spiritual advisors. So people are losing their faith, but they still want someone to talk to them about morality and purpose and meaning in their life. And just because you don't believe in a God doesn't mean that you don't have that need. It's a basic human need to find meaning and purpose in your life and to feel community and feel that sense of connectedness that people used to get from belief. And I think we humanists need to step up to this plate and recognize that there's a real need in this country and in the world to have a discussion to help people find meaning in their life in the absence of faith. And that's what I try to do with my work, is to talk about morality and meaning and purpose and how you choose, because ultimately this is a choice. How you want to proceed with your life is a choice you need to make. And I think a lot of people just, they float through it, but there's clearly people out that want to have a more explicit conversation about what it is they value, why they value that, whether these are the values they should be holding, or whether maybe there's a better set of values. And more importantly, how do they implement that in their lives? So I think there's an opportunity for humanists and to reach out to people and help them bridge this gap when they come to start questioning faith, because it's no longer finding a place in their life, but they still have a need for morality. So I think what I would like to see is for humanist communities to yes, hi dude, I want to see humanist communities step up to the plate and start offering programs on morality and on purpose. One of the humanist groups in Tampa this weekend is hosting a seminar, a roundtable discussion on why was I born? What is the meaning in life? And they're going to have a conversation about that. And to me, that's very, very exciting, because while I, as a humanist, have already come to terms with this question, I recognize that so many of my friends have not, and that they need to have this discussion, and they want to have this discussion. They just don't know who to have this discussion with, because they're used to having this conversation in a religious framework, and they don't have that anymore. And so what do? So I think we need to create places where people can have this discussion and come to terms with it. I'm a member, I'm actually on the board of the Spiritualist Naturalist Society, and I posted a video on compassion versus honesty as a value system. And the very first comment back on it, several people have commented, but the first comment was, it's so refreshing to have a conversation and to listen to a conversation about the value of compassion and the value of honesty and which one is more important, without bringing in ancient texts, to just have the conversation for the sake of the conversation with what we know as humans. What is our experience as humans with these values? And we can have that conversation. It's very easy, and it's actually way more satisfying to talk about things like compassion and honesty and morality and decision making in the context of real life experiences than it is to go back and look and say, well, what does the Bible say about this in the context of sheep herders? Or, what did Muhammad say about this while he was in his cave? It's way more tangible to talk about morality and talk about which is more important, compassion or honesty, in the context of how they actually impact your lives. And this is something that humanism and the humanist community is uniquely suited to offer. In fact, we're the only ones that can offer this sort of conversation, because our framework for morality is based on human need and human desires and human experience. So we're the ones practiced at this. People like it. So let's go out and create the communities where people can have these conversations. Let's start centers for humanistic living so we can educate people on these topics and have these conversations, because there's definitely a real need out there for it. So how can humanists make a difference? Let's talk about the life, what it is to live a life as a humanist, and focus on that. So How Dude is saying, there's people pulling the strings, there's powers that are preventing progress from happening, and can we create dramatic change, and have we seen it? No, we have to unite and fix things hand in hand. And absolutely, How Dude, I absolutely agree with that. But I would argue that actually there's been quite a bit of dramatic change that's occurred in just the last 100 years. It's very easy to get frustrated with where we are and forget about where we've come from. But it wasn't just 50 years ago that blacks and whites were not allowed to get married, and now that's fairly commonplace. It was only 200 years ago that you could be killed for not being religious, and that's not the case anymore either. And we have medicine, modern medicine, that's actually fairly good at helping us cure problems. In fact, the lifespan of the average human has increased quite dramatically in the last 50 to 100 years. We don't even know what our possibilities are. So even though there's still a lot of problems we're facing, we've actually come very far. And I remember I went to a seminar led by a man who used to work at the UN, and he says, you know, even though there's a lot of intractable problems, there's actually been a lot of progress. He said, you know, just look at South Africa. They thought apartheid would take 50 years to eradicate, and it took them 20 once they set their mind to it. So it's slow going, it's hard to do, but we can do it. And yes, we do have to unite for that. So, can we end starvation for the poor, provide health care? Yes, we can. The time has come to unite. Humanist 2012. It's really interesting to see the way humanist movements organize. And I think this comes back to the question of motivation. What is it that we want to accomplish as human beings and therefore as humanists, and how might we accomplish that? When you look at humanist groups in America, by and large, they've been academic study groups, philosophic discussion groups. And you're starting to see that change in America. You're starting to see active volunteer organizations organized as humanists, where they go out and they feed the homeless underneath bridges in Houston. The first people to bring aid into Haiti after the earthquake a couple of years ago was actually an explicitly humanist group that managed to put it all together and get the Jamaican military to offer a ship to bring it over. That was humanists doing it. So you're starting to see humanists organized in more active ways in America to push social progress. But we also have to look back at the history of the organization and why the organization, like the American Humanist Association, was founded in the 30s. And it was really founded to push political positions like a woman's right to choose and access to health care for women and contraceptive planning for women. That was a humanist initiative. And you know, the religious right that hates that is right to blame that on humanism because it was literally humanists who pushed Planned Parenthood and created Planned Parenthood and got all that stuff done. That was humanists. So, you know, and the same thing with the civil rights movement. The people that, you know, everybody knows Martin Luther King, but they don't always know, unless you're a student of it, A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin, who were humanists, who were pushing the philosophy and the agenda along. So there's a lot of history of humanist activism in the United States itself, except it wasn't always put forward as explicitly humanist. And you're starting to see that change where humanists are doing what they're doing explicitly to create change. And when you look at what humanism is in, say, South America, it's a political organization. It's a political party. The Humanist Party is a political party, and it comes out of a humanist named Silo, who a cult kind of grew up about him. And that's another interesting thing about humanism we'll get to maybe the next time, which is how humanism is so powerful. It has a tendency for people to go nuts about it when they find out about it, which is kind of anti-humanist because we're anti-dogma. But there is a lot of hope out there that if we continue pushing, we can see the change we want to see. And yes, a little bit. Anyways, there is ways to see the things we want to see, but we do have to be organized to do it. And I think one of the things that humanism offers and why it's been so successful in the past is because a humanist is not just concerned about making the world a better place. How we go about doing that is very, very strategic. And it's based in reality. This is one of the benefits to being a humanist, is that it's reality-based. So when we go to solve a problem, like getting women access to contraceptives or civil rights, we do so in a very reality-based way, and so therefore in a very pragmatic way, and therefore we're actually fairly effective when we put our mind to doing something. There's a lot of hiccups along the way, but that's to be expected, and we're okay with that. as long as we get to our ultimate goal, whatever that goal might be. I have a dream right now. I just published a book called The Bully Vaccine. And my goal is I'd really like to see an eradication of bullying. And my book is unusual because I use operant conditioning techniques. I teach operant conditioning techniques. And the idea is that if you can condition kids to not be bullied, you can teach them the specific skills they need to know to get a bully to not bully them using operant conditioning techniques. You can condition bullies to not bully. And this is absolutely something that's doable. And people think about it and they go, oh, there's always going to be bullies. It's an intractable problem. No one's been able to solve it. But the problem is I think they haven't really applied the right tool to the problem. And when I come out of an animal training background, and every animal trainer in the country uses these techniques, and they work very well. And if you apply them to humans, they work very well as well because, hello, we're animals. And we can apply these techniques to bullying and get bullying to stop. And it's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight. But if we can teach people these specific skills, we can make the world a better place. And even if it's just half of the population that learns them, it's still going to have a dramatic impact on our culture if people learn how to be fearless at a young age. And the way you learn how to be fearless is through compassion. So there you go. It takes time. We can do it, but we do so in a very strategic way, in a very reality-based way. So that is, this show has only been a half hour long, and we're coming up on the end of it. And yes, I am from Florida. I'm Jennifer Hancock, and I'm a humanist at the risk of sounding like we're at an AA meeting. You can find me on the web at www.jen-hancock.com. I have a blog and a podcast and several books. If you want to learn more about humanism, sign up for my mailing list, and I'll give you a free copy of Jen Hancock's Hand to Humanism Handbook. But if you don't want to sign up for my mailing list, go ahead and buy it online at like Amazon and Barnes & Nobles and places like that. It's 99 cents for the ebook. My book called The Bully Vaccine is just out. If you have ever dealt with obnoxious people, get this book, because it really will help explain to you what the social dynamic is and how to control it so that you can be fearless and you can deal with bullies and obnoxious people in a very effective and yet compassionate way, which is the humanist way. And that's at thebullyvaccine.com. And let's see, what else do I have? I have a 6-week course. If you're interested, it goes into detail on why humanists are compassionate and how we implement that in our lives, ethics, critical thinking, decision-making, and coping skills. The people who've taken that course say it's very, very profound. And of course, I do this show monthly. It's a half-hour show I do monthly. So if you have questions you would like me to ask, or you want me to talk about a particular theme one week, please send me an email through my website or through Blog TV, and I will ask them.